I'm going to record it on Zoom as well. Well, good morning, Facebook. I'm Dawn Parks and I'm with Shimula, and I'm very excited to be here today to talk with Jim Crump, who is insurance products extraordinaire. But before I introduce Jim and what we're going to be chatting about with regard to insurance, I just wanted to remind everybody what we are looking to accomplish by doing this live Great Resignation series. You know, we find that something like 4 million people left the workforce again last April. They're still trying to tally how many people left the workforce in August and September and October, but people keep leaving the workforce, and they're either resigning to go into retirement, they might be going and looking for other jobs, they might be getting ready to start their own business, but at the end of the day, what's happening is they're leaving the workforce. And one of the things that Liz and I of Shimula have found is that sometimes people are jumping without a plan. And especially as we enter into the holiday season, it's going to be easy to be thinking back to last year when you were home all the time. Some of us really loved being at home with our friends and our family all the time. Some of us were like, ooh, get away. I can't take this anymore. But you're going to remember the good stuff. And if you were thinking about leaving your job, now is going to be the time when you're going to go, oh, if I could just do something else. And if that's what you want to do, we are like, yay, you. Let's do this, but let's do it with a little bit of knowledge up front. Because Liz and I learned, we did the big jump before the Great Resignation, and we have learned a lot in that process. And we work with so many women who have made the jump, and we want to just share things you need to be considering. We will never tell you what to do or how to do it, but we'll make sure we ask enough questions so that when you do make the decision to go, you have the knowledge that you need. And then Liz and I are always there to be your net. You know, we have classes and courses and programs and coaching opportunities where we can walk with you individually through your particular set of circumstances to make sure that you can be the most successful in the next phase of your life. Because the reality is, we are not here on this planet for very long, and you should do the things that you love, which is why I'm so glad to be able to have Jim with us today, because Jim really, so I've never really been like, I don't always understand insurance. Jim has taught me a lot about insurance, but you either love being in the insurance business or you get out of it really, really fast. And Jim has been involved in this business for a very long time. Well, I don't want to say how long, but I want to introduce Jim to you so that you guys can all learn from Jim, and we're just going to ask him some questions. So Jim, I want to introduce you to the crew. And why don't you tell people a little bit about your background around insurance, and then I'll ask you some more specific questions about what people ought to be thinking about as they prepare for the Great Resignation.
Sounds good. I have been in and out of the health insurance and life insurance business since 1981. Okay, so I gave it up. Yeah, a long time ago, I got my first license. Been in and out though. I did what you said. I got in it, didn't like it, got out. My dad was a lifer in the insurance business. And finally, about 4 years ago, I jumped back in with both feet and reestablished myself specifically as a health insurance agent. Yeah, we write a little bit of life, but that's really not the main thing I focus on. It's health insurance and all the options that are available to you.
That's really great. You know, and I remember I met you on LinkedIn. So for any of you, if you're ever, especially when you're working from home, LinkedIn is a great tool for getting connected to people and for getting new business. And I must have been posting something and I saw whatever Jim was doing. And so I reached out to Jim. So in the spirit of transparency, I do use Jim for my health insurance. And one of the things that I found when I made the jump is that it's a crazy world out there. And when you are especially if you're of a certain age and you have certain, you know, anybody who's over the age of 40, your body's changing, right? Your health changes. You've got kids. We're not that spring chicken 25 where, you know, I might go to the doctor once a year for something. So as we get older and our body starts to change and mature, trying to figure out what's the right kind of health plan. What do you need if you think you're going to have a surgery or not have a surgery? And oh my God, here's this premium, and then there's that deductible, and then here's this copay, and then there's this co-insurance, and here's private, and then here's Obamacare. And I was about ready to pull my hair out trying to figure out what to do. And it seemed like everybody I talked to only had a very little window of information. So I had to talk to this person, and then I'd go talk to this person, and then I'd go talk to this person. And then I met Jim, who could put the whole thing together for me. And Jim lives in Florida, right? You live in Florida?
Georgia.
Georgia, and I'm in Ohio. And so it just goes to show that I don't have to have a neighbor necessarily, to work with. I can work with somebody from another part of the country. So Jim came to my rescue. He really helped educate me about what I needed to know and what I needed to understand, and how to work through a lot of the questions that I had, given that I'm not 40, I'm not 50, I'm actually now into this decade of my 60s, which is just hard to believe. But he was masterful. So Jim, if somebody were to give you a call, like, what are the kinds of things they need to consider if they're moving from corporate healthcare, into having to get their own healthcare? Because the one thing I do know from you is there's enough plans out there that shouldn't stop you.
That's right.
Right. It shouldn't stop you. So what I want you guys to take away from this is that there's a plan for you that'll work for you. Right. And so don't let, oh my God, I have to go out into the marketplace to find insurance, stop you from fulfilling on your dream. So Jim, what do people need to be thinking about when they're looking at moving from a corporate insurance plan into an individual private plan?
The first thing to consider is your age. At 65, you're eligible for Medicare. Until then, you have to enter the market from an individual perspective, unless you have a spouse that you can, use their health insurance or something from their business. But the first thing to consider is your age. The next thing to consider is something called COBRA insurance. When you leave a corporate location, they will offer you a continuation of benefits program called COBRA, where you take on the full expense of paying for your health care. For many of us, that was an eye-opener. We may be paying a couple $300 a month for our benefits at work, and suddenly we discover that on top of that, our employer's paying another $1,200 or $1,500, and suddenly COBRA is $1,500 or $1,800 a month to continue the same benefits that we've had before. So that is a big eye-opener, that suddenly this entire weight is falling to us to pay for. For some of us, that may be a good option. My thoughts on that is not unless you've compared to see what else is available. You have 60 days from the date that you leave employment to opt for COBRA. So a couple of very important things happen at this point. You also have 60 days from the time you leave employment to opt for an Affordable Care Act plan. Some people call this Obamacare, if you will, something that you would get from either a state exchange or something you would get from healthcare.gov. Y'all excuse the light on me. It's coming in the window. I've moved my desk and I wasn't expecting this. So if that's distracting, I'm sorry.
That's okay. And I turn my head periodically to put a note in the chat so people can know. So it's not that I'm not paying attention. My Facebook screen is over there.
Good deal. So one of the most important things to do is if you opt for COBRA, it eliminates or takes out the 60-day window where you could have opted for an Affordable Care Act plan. And the next time that you can consider an Affordable Care Act plan is either during open enrollment, which is November 1st through December 15th each year. This year it's a month longer, but that's the standard, November 1st through December 15th, or at the end of the 18-month COBRA window. So if you opt for COBRA, you have limited your options. Now you can go ahead.
Let me make sure I understand this. So if I opt for COBRA, I actually then have to stay with my COBRA plan until the next open enrollment for Obamacare.
Unless you opt out for a private plan that has nothing to do with the Affordable Care Act. But if you have a serious pre-existing condition, this is especially important, because if you opt for COBRA, you are stuck with it at least until the next open enrollment period.
So it could be that if people decide to make that jump now, right, at the Christmas holidays, And so they jump into Cobra in January, and then they find, like me, I wound up having, I had an accident in December of last year and dislocated my hip. And then, and the plan I was in, I could, if you were in Cobra, then you would have to stay in Cobra with that plan and all of the expenses that are associated with that until December of that year, 12 months later, before you could get into a plan where you're paying less, if that's an option for you.
Right.
Got it.
And
Okay.
if you are relatively healthy, you could opt out to a private plan, but you will
Okay.
not be eligible for an Affordable Care Act plan except during open enrollment periods or at the end of that 18-month COBRA period.
Okay, got it.
Okay. Next thing to do, if you see that you are going to leave, retire, move on to something else, whatever it is, get in touch with an independent agent about 30 to 60 days in advance of that date, so that you can start looking at your options. Okay. Don't just assume, oh, well, I'll just go with Cobra. No, there's lots of other options. With the way that the subsidies are set up right now at healthcare.gov, where you get assistance paying for your healthcare, it used to be that if you made over a certain level, you didn't get any help, but that ceiling is much higher than it was a year ago or 2 years ago. So even people that are making $100,000 a year may get assistance in paying for their health care. I think that's an important thing to look into. And then also look at private plans. Look and see if you qualify for any of the plans that might be considered private in nature. Make sure that the agent you work with explains those in detail, that you know the pros and the cons of each of those plans and how they differ from the Affordable Care Act plans. If you don't understand the differences between them and you're not educated on that, you're not making an educated decision. You're just going with whatever the agent thinks is best. Don't do that. Learn everything about these plans so that you can make the educated decision instead of someone saying, oh, let's just go with this. And suddenly you're stuck with something you didn't understand.
Right. So when you're so I'm thinking back, you guys, when I talk to you, I'm thinking about it from my experience, right? And I'm hoping that you can learn from my experience, because I happen to really, in finding Jim, and I'm not trying to promote Jim, but you're welcome to call Jim if you want to, because he's really great. But he really has a great way of explaining a lot of things. So let me make sure that I get this part right. So there is the Affordable Care Act. Now, Affordable Care Act is available in your state, right? So when if I have Affordable Care Act for Ohio, it's only good in Ohio. And if I get sick visiting my daughter in Illinois, then I'm paying out of network prices. And you have to make sure your doctor is, you want to check to see if your doctor is in that plan, right? Or are you willing to change plans? But what I'm hearing you say, though, is that the Obamacare Affordable Act plan, they have certain things that it can do. And then your private plan does other things, but there's not always, it's not always apples to apples, right?
Let me correct one thing you said. Some states have Affordable Care Act plans that are PPOs, which means they cover the entire nation. Most states have only available HMOs or POSs, which are state bound. Okay, if your state is one of those, your plans are only good inside the state that you're talking about, where you live, your residence, unless there is an emergency situation. In the case of a horrible accident, appendicitis, those kind of things where, if you've got a bad sinus infection, they expect you to drive home to go see your own doctor. But if you've had an emergency situation, that is covered under Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act plans out of state. And again, most states are state bound, but there are still some states that have PPO plans, which means you do have the ability, portability, if you will, to be seen in all 50 states.
Oh yeah, and if you're out of town and you have a sinus infection, I'm going to bet a lot of the doctors have like telemedicine, so you could still get something taken care of while you're on the road or something like that. But yeah, if you wind up in the hospital, that's a whole nother ball game.
Yeah.
Okay, so I know that when I left corporate America, I was leaving. I was working for Purdue, so it was a beautiful plan. I mean, it had every bell and whistle, but most of them I never used and probably would never use. But it was always nice to know that it was there if I needed it, right? But so a lot of the private plans, I always think about the private plans remind me more of like a corporate plan, right? Or is that just fake? Is that a myth?
Anymore, the corporate plans are almost identical to the Affordable Care Act plans. Now they may have better rates, they may have lower deductibles and what have you, but they're pretty much the same. And those plans are consistent with the Affordable Care Act, meaning that they must contain the 10 essential health benefits that are mandated by that act. I'm not going to sit here and list all of them. There are things like mental health, maternity, and those types of things, wellness coverage. Some of the private plans, they will be put together in such a way that they don't have all of the essential health benefits. That's why I'm saying when you talk to an independent agent about all these different plans, make sure you understand, okay, if I'm going to go with this plan over here or this plan over there instead of an Affordable Care Act plan, what does it not have that an essential health benefits plan, an Affordable Care Act plan has? Okay. If it's not compliant with the Affordable Care Act, what is it missing? How does it differ? And it's important that you understand that so that you don't get caught surprised that it doesn't cover maternity or that the prescription benefit is not real good, or maybe it doesn't even cover wellness visits. So you need to know the difference so that if you're opting for a different or less expensive plan, what is left out and what am I going to have to come out of pocket for that might make it not less expensive in the long run?
So what that tells me is it's really important to be truthful, not like somebody would lie about it, but you do not want to be surprised. You don't, we had a really great plan. I had a really great plan, and when I hurt my hip, it covered the emergency, but then I found out that it doesn't cover the particular plan I had. This is not all plans, but the particular plan I had did not cover the hip replacement that was going to be required as a result of the accident. And luckily, I got on the phone with Jim and I said, okay, now what do I do? And we were in open enrollment and I was able to get onto a different plan because I needed a different plan that would be able to pay for the hip replacement, which I knew was coming. So if you're, you want to take a look at your own medical history. So if you're a person that has joint issues or bone issues, right? You want to be upfront with your insurance guy or gal so that they can get you the best plan. If you have a chronic problem, you want to make sure it's covered. So don't pretend that you're healthy in an area where you're not, because you have some confidentiality responsibilities and all of this too, right, Jim?
Oh, absolutely. The information that's shared with my clients is considered HIPAA compliant information, and I'm not allowed to share that with anybody at all, not even
Right.
my spouse.
Right. So that's really important. Is you have to really be honest with your insurance agent so that they can really get you the best possible plan. And I promise they can get you a better deal than what you could ever find as you're casting about on the internet trying to figure out which plan is the best plan. So Jim, I've been kind of asking questions as we go. What are some other things that people need to be thinking about when they're, is there pre-work that they should do before they
Sure.
give somebody like you a call?
Sure. They need to know all the doctors that are important to them. They need to know all the medicines they take. They need to think about any diagnoses that they have received. I thought of something else just a second ago and it has eluded my mind because I was off onto this. They need to be thinking long and hard about, do they know someone that they can contact that they trust? An insurance agent's job is to mitigate risk. It's to figure out a way to limit your liability in the case of something happening. So as you talk to an insurance agent, if they are from the very beginning pushing you towards a particular plan without even learning anything about you, hang up the phone. Okay. They're chasing a commission. And that is not the way, A, you take care of people, but B, it's also not the way you build a business, a long-term business. People refer people to you because you take care of them, not because you ripped them off for a big commission. And unfortunately, there are people in our industry that operate that way. Can I get a fast buck and move on to the next person? And those are the people that never get referrals. That's the people that have to go find every single person they ever write. My business is 100% referral based. Every piece of business I write is because someone said, hey, you need to talk to Jim, or someone that I meet that I strike up a conversation with. So look for someone like that. Look for someone who is in this for the long haul, someone who understands how this business works. And also look for someone who can shop all of the plans for you instead of someone that only has one insurer in mind and they push you that direction from the very beginning.
I think that's a really important thing, is to be able to have a wide range of options, because one of the things I was thinking about is I have a kid who's, finishing up college, and she's in another state. And that adds a whole nother set of complications, right?
Yes.
So you want to be able to think about, how do you make sure that your kid is covered, or if there's other people that are being covered under your plan, you really want to dig hard and make sure you know what's happening with that person. When you almost have to kind of predict what you think will happen in the next year, so that you can be fully prepared, right?
That's right. And another thing I'll point out that I think is very important, as you're doing research, as you're on Google typing in, what about this, what about that, don't fall for the ads that say, let us help you, or give us a little bit of information and we'll point you in the right direction. These are efforts on the part of lead companies to get your information and then sell it to multiple insurance agencies and agents across the country. If you put your information in, a phone number or an email or any of the above, you're going to get blown up for the next 30 to 60 days. Matter of fact, I've had people tell me they just basically went to Verizon or AT&T and just got a new phone number. I mean, it can be that bad, especially this time of year, because with automatic texting being a part of many agents' routine, and the fact that many of them feel pressure to dial X number of phone calls per day, you're liable to get as many as 30 or 40 phone calls per day within the first couple of days that you put your information in. So try to work with an agent that you feel comfortable with instead of one that you find at random. But as soon as you put your information in, basically, whether you know it or not, you've given them permission to bombard you.
Okay, that's good. Good to know. That's good to know. All right. So it's so let's say I want to make the jump at the end of the year. Now is the time. I can either do Cobra if I'm working for corporate America, or if I know on January 1 I'm going to be leaving my corporate job. And then now open enrollment is what, another month?
It normally is through December 15th. This year it'll go to January 15th. It's been extended, but it's normally November 1 through December 15th.
Okay, so this is not something that you should take lightly, right? There's a lot of things that you can figure out later when you make the jump. But if your family has a tendency to have some illness, or you're spending more time than you care to at the doctor, or you're going to have some sort of procedure, or you need physical therapy on a regular basis for some injury from when you played football back in the day, right? You need to be contacting somebody now to start to work through that process, because you don't want to make a decision in a 20-minute conversation with someone, right? You want to be able to spend time. I don't know. Jim and I spent, a lot of time where he would send me information. I would read it. I would call him back and say, all right, what does this mean? And what does this mean? And how does this work? And because I wanted to make sure that I was making the best decision that I possibly could. And you don't want to do it when you have 8 hours left to make a decision, and your insurance guy has decided that he's taken the holiday and now you're out of luck and you have to go figure something out, right? I would suspect that there are people like that. Okay, I haven't heard from that person in 30 days. I've emailed them 3 times and I'm guessing they don't need insurance. So then you've closed out your book for the end of the year. So you really need to reach out to somebody soon, right?
60 days in advance of that date is the best time. And it doesn't
Okay.
have to be at the end of the year, because if you're leaving a corporate plan in May, that triggers a special enrollment period of 60 days from the date that your normal insurance ended. So it,
Oh,
it just happened that you needed this done at the perfect time during open enrollment. But if you're leaving a corporate plan or your COBRA runs out in, say, May, it triggers a 60-day window where you can get insurance put in place. So June, September, doesn't matter when that is, but if you're leaving, if again, the triggers are you're getting married, you're getting divorced, you're having a baby, there was a death in the family, you just got out of jail, or you moved from one state to the other, or you've lost a qualified plan from a company, you have a 60-day window.
so no matter when they choose to leave, they have 60 days to enroll in a new plan
Or COBRA.
or COBRA. But if they choose COBRA, that's when they're then, I'm going to say stuck with COBRA, but you can't get out of a COBRA plan until the next enrollment period. But during
you
that
can
60
get out of it. You can get out of it. You just can't get an Affordable Care Act plan to replace it until open enrollment.
Okay, right. Okay. So you would have to go to a private plan, which is still probably going to be less expensive than your COBRA plan. It may not have all the bells and whistles though, right? Depending on what you can find in your area. And because you have to go through a health assessment, right?
If you're going with a private plan, there will be health questions. And most guaranteed issue plans, with the exception of the Affordable Care Act plan, are not complete plans, because an insurance company that has the ability to underwrite and ask questions is not going to accept you with their eyes closed on a plan that has an open door dollar amount. They want to know what their risk, they want to assess their risk.
Right. And how long does that process take?
It could be as quick as 2 hours. It can take as long as 15 to 20 days. Just depends on the person and whether or not they want to actually request medical records from a doctor, which does happen about 10% of the time. Most of the time, that's not required. Most of the private plans I write are approved within 24 to 48 hours.
Okay. And if I chose a private plan, can I then, so if I choose a private plan, I can go COBRA or a private plan, but if I'm in a private plan, I can't go into an Affordable Care Act plan until open enrollment.
That is correct.
Unless there's one of those triggers,
That's
right?
exactly
So
right. Yep.
I leave January 15th. I don't go to COBRA. I decide to go with a private plan. I don't like my private plan. Too bad. You're going to be with that private plan until open enrollment again, unless it's
a different private plan.
Or a different, so I can move private plans, but I can't go into the Affordable Care Act plan unless it's open enrollment or it's within 60 days of the date that I leave my job, my qualified plan, and my qualified plan can be a COBRA plan as well, right?
Yes.
So the COBRA plan comes to an end. Oh my gosh, there's so much here.
There's a lot of moving pieces.
We may have to do this again and get like hunker down a little bit further, but it is now 11:29, and I just want to say thank you, Jim, for being here. I'm going to put your I'll put some information into the chat that is appropriate. I don't know if you want your email in there.
That's fine.
Okay, I'll put your email into the chat on Facebook if you guys want to contact Jim directly. But I just want to say thank you so much for sharing this. And I think we may need to get you back here just to take just some more details that people might want to know about, like what's the difference between a premium and a deductible and co-insurance and a copay, and just maybe a little bit of a glossary of terms might be really valuable for people.
Be glad to do that.
And then I'll write up a little document that kind of describes these timeline things, unless you have something that we can share. But thank you again, Jim, from the bottom of my heart for spending time on this. And really, folks, it's time. If you're thinking about it and you want to do it over December, now is the time to start to get the knowledge. These guys are ready and available to help you learn, because they are only successful if you understand the product that you're buying. And in this last minute here, I just wanted to remind folks that here at Shimula, we do have a couple of programs going on that if you're thinking about making that jump, the planning part is critical. We have a do-it-yourself course that we're actually now offering for free to veterans if you register by the end of November. And it's an online, you have 6 months to do the 6 modules and you have all the workbooks. Normally it's a $499 course, or you can take that course, which is amplified, and you can meet weekly with a community group. And we have 25% off of that program. So that's running around $1,500 with the price discount. And you can enroll any time in that, but that price is good through the end of November as well. Otherwise, it's $19.97 a person. And it walks you through what's the vision, how much is enough? Do I need enough of this, that, the other thing, and gets you on your yellow brick road to join Dorothy, to get yourself to your big and most favorite dream ever. So anyway, we will see you guys back here again tomorrow. And thank you once again, Jim. And I'm going to sign us off until the next time.
Thank you very much.